Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at yet another big Chinese tech company called Tencent, and also look at it investing into Tencent through the process Naspers lens, as they own about a 30% chunk of Tencent. Now this is a company that I've been meaning to look into for a number of months now, when we first started hearing Mohnish Pabrai start talking about it, but I haven't had time due to having a newborn around the house. Takes up a good chunk of my time, but over this last week or so I have had a lot more time to start doing a lot more research on these things that I've been meaning to look at, and looking into Tencent was one of them. There's a number of great resources out there. In today's video, we're going to be hearing the thoughts from both Matthew Peterson and also Mohnish Pabrai. These guys are a lot smarter than me, so we should definitely listen to what they have to say. Matthew Peterson is only someone that I've only started reading over a fair bit the last week or so. I did watch one of his videos about maybe 6 months ago where he broke down Daily Journal, which was fantastic as well, but only over the last week have I really started digging in and learning a bit more about Matthew Peterson, which I highly recommend. I'll leave a link in the description below to his website. He also has his own YouTube channel as well, where he breaks down a lot of the companies that he has within his portfolio. And also on his website, you can get access to his partnership letters, which I highly recommend reading. I've only just started digging in myself, but definitely worth spending some time reading over those, I feel. Anyway, with that said, let's jump on over to hear what Matthew Peterson has to say about this whole Tencent Naspers sort of a deal.
So Tencent is potentially one of the best companies in the world. It is one of the largest companies in China, one of the top three. They own things like WeChat, which has 1 billion users. They have a huge investment portfolio. They are getting the price getting whipped around through everything going on with the Chinese Communist Party, and it's basically, we sort of expect, with broad strokes, I think it's fair to say that China's GDP will surpass the US GDP in the next decade or two. And this is one of the largest companies, and it's selling for like a third of the value of the US large companies. And China's going to be bigger, and they have 1 billion users, and 1 billion users spend like a day. And by the way, they're in everything. It's fintech, it's everything. It's quite remarkable. So that's Tencent. Tencent, we've done a bit of work on, quite a bit of work on, and recognize it as being, and it's growing at 35% per year. Okay, it's like smaller than Berkshire Hathaway and making way more money than Berkshire Hathaway and growing at 33%, 35% a year. It's incredible what they've created. What's interesting is that Naspers was a little company in South Africa, and they 20 years ago found this little company called Tencent in China, and they took $20 million and they bought a third of the business for $20 million. And what happened is they then took that home, and Tencent became this behemoth, and Naspers inevitably ended up owning this huge amount, and they are breaking the Johannesburg exchange. The structural situation is a big problem. So they're the biggest on the Johannesburg exchange now. They're 23%. They're hitting all sorts of limits because investors can no longer buy the ETFs because they have too much exposure to Naspers. And so the management is working through all sorts of things to try to close this valuation gap. What's interesting is if we use just really high level numbers, we think Tencent's worth over $1 trillion right now, but let's say it's 600 billion in the market, and they own about 28% of it or so. Basically, the value of their current Tencent holdings is like a 40% discount. The price of Naspers is like 40% discount to just how much Tencent they own, and they own other things as well. So there's like call options on other things where they could have other big gains. So we're basically getting this levered play on Tencent through our ownership of Naspers, and Naspers management is going through this systematic approach to try to close this valuation gap, but there's a structural issue. So what have they done? They've taken all of their e-commerce subsidiaries, and they've spun them out and listed them in Amsterdam as a different e-commerce entity called Prosus. So Prosus now owns, it becomes quite complex, but Prosus now owns Tencent, and then Naspers owns Prosus. So now Prosus is trading at a valuation gap to Tencent, and then Naspers is trading at another valuation gap to Prosus. And ultimately, there becomes these super high gaps. We don't know when they'll close, but as Tencent grows, Naspers and Prosus should also be growing. And management is they have a pretty shrewd capital allocation strategy, and they are working very hard to close these gaps. There's all sorts of different political situations, because we have situations with China, we have situations in South Africa, but we're monitoring it pretty closely, and it's so attractive to be able to buy one of the biggest companies in the biggest economies in the world that's growing at 35%, selling at a discount to itself, and then through an external entity that somehow is trapped in the system, selling for a deeper discount to this. So if we see Tencent double over the next 5 years, we can see Naspers go up 4 or 5x. And I don't think that would be I think that growth is still in an infant stage. So it wouldn't be where we stop. It would just keep going from there.
Hope you guys got some value there from Matthew as he broke down the whole Tencent Naspers arrangement. I think he definitely broke it down quite well. The next video we're going to look at is from Mohnish Pabrai. I'm sure most of you have probably watched a lot of Mohnish Pabrai's videos, but this is just a little clip where he sort of breaks down China and also investing into Tencent as well, which I highly think is worth checking out. So let's jump on over and check out what Mohnish has to say about investing into Tencent.
So China's a good example of what we just spoke about is that I think it would be too wide a brush to take a complex country like China and, put it into 3 sentences, if you will. So, I think there are great businesses and great management teams all over the world. And there are many of them in China. And, I think like Charlie Munger would say that the Chinese are natural entrepreneurs. They're actually natural capitalists who were trapped in a socialist system. And so when those shackles were lifted, you actually unleashed something quite dramatic. And, I would say capitalism and entrepreneurship is still very embryonic in China, but it is coming about really quickly. So I think I would be, given my circle of competence, I think most of China would be off limits for me, just because I just probably couldn't understand it well enough. Small sliver of it, I think I can understand. And especially if you look at some businesses, like, let's say, if you look at a business like Tencent, or if you look at a business like Alibaba, these 2 companies specifically, very early in their journey, had Western investors or non-Chinese investors. And both these companies, right from the beginning, I think of them more as being happen to be based in China, and because it's such a large market, happen to have most of their operations in China. But they're really, in many ways, multinational in their views and how they look at things. They've had a lot of, I would say, non-Chinese infusion into their DNA and thinking very early. And many of those elements are a big positive for them. So yeah, I would think that China would be a difficult country for most investors, because you need to understand the nuances. A little bit of it, I think, can be understood. I think that, to me, the DNA of Alibaba and Tencent is what is unusual. I think Alibaba and Tencent have very unusual cultures and DNA.
Do you prefer Baba to Tencent?
They're both really good businesses. I think Tencent is interesting to look at through a Naspers lens.
Yeah.
Through the Prosus Naspers lens. I think that's a good lens to look, because you get a good discount if you go through from there.
Do you own Naspers as well?
I cannot comment on things that not in the public domain.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was.
I like Naspers.
But you like Naspers, yeah.
I like Naspers. I think Baba and Tencent are similar, but they're also very different. Mm-hmm. Tencent has this bazooka they carry on their shoulder called WeChat, and they can fire that bazooka at will. And you look at a company like PDD, they just fire the bazooka and PDD's, suddenly sales are through the roof, and such. So Tencent has a pretty interesting ability to scale up a range of businesses.
Well, and don't they own like a third of Sea Limited as well? Yeah.
They have, their investment portfolio is incredible.
It's incredible, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, which is going to be huge in the future. We just don't know which ones. That's why I think those are good plays, because that's a great basket.
Hopefully you guys got some value there listening to both the thoughts of Matthew Peterson and also Mohnish Pabrai. Like I said, I highly recommend you go over and check out their YouTube channel and also their websites as well. Definitely a ton of value to be had from both these channels. Also, if you're wanting to do some more research into Tencent as well, I highly recommend checking out both Frank Tabor and also CJ Wilson's YouTube channels. They've collabed on a couple of different videos where they do fantastic breakdown of the company as well. So definitely recommend checking out all those channels if you're wanting to get a bit more insight to the company as well. There are a lot of things you need to consider before you would make an investment with Tencent or Naspers or Process, is what's going on in the wider macro environment with China and the CCP and them clamping down on a lot of different big Chinese tech companies at the moment. And also if you throw in Evergrande in the mix as well with the $300 billion debt pile they're about to default on and what's going on there. I have made a video that I sort of break down the real high level of that. Definitely check that out if you're interested to learn a little bit more about that. But that's definitely something you would want to consider before you made an investment with any of these companies, including Alibaba or JD.com or anything along those lines. But in turn, it is also making these companies at a good price at the moment. It's essentially trading below what they're intrinsically worth. But like I said, definitely do your own research around a lot of this, especially when it comes to the wider macro environment. Is there a lot to take on there? And to be honest, it's probably above most of our pay grades whether to make on a call on what's happening there, unless you're on the ground in China at the moment or you're Chinese and you have a deeper understanding of a lot of this. For all of us, we can just sort of read a lot of articles and watch a few videos on it and to sort of get a bit of our own take on it. But that's just my take on what's going on there. Me personally, I haven't taken investment or taken a position with Naspers or Process or Tencent or anything yet, but it is a company that I am sort of researching and reading on a fair bit over this last week, and I may take a small position within my eToro portfolio, so check that out if you're interested to learn a little bit more what's going on there. But as it stands, I haven't taken a position just yet. But yes, at the current prices, they are looking very attractive, I feel. But definitely, like I said, this is not a buy recommendation or anything along those lines. Definitely do your research, and there's definitely a lot of good research out there at the moment on YouTube and just on the internet around a lot of these different companies as well. Anyway, with that said, guys, we're going to wrap that one up there for today's video. If you did get some value, please do us a favor. Hit that like button, and if you want to see future videos and new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. That way you can stay up to date when the next video drops. Till next time, guys, stay safe, and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers, guys.